The beat begins. The bass line thumped through the high school hallway, a rhythm only he could hear. My husband, let's call him what he was then, a kid with a dream and a notebook full of lyrics, moved through the crowded corridor like he owned it, even though he owned nothing but ambition and a worn-out backpack. It was 1999, and Atlanta was alive with possibility. The city pulsed with music, with hustle, with the kind of energy that made you believe you could be anything if you just worked hard enough. I noticed him before he noticed me. I was the new girl, the one born in Frankfurt, Germany, who somehow ended up in an Atlanta high school trying to figure out where I fit. My parents had moved us to the States when I was young enough to lose my accent, but old enough to remember what it felt like to be from somewhere else. The sense of being between worlds, it never really left me. Maybe that's why I recognized something in him, in the way he carried himself like he was building something invisible that only he could see. He was organized, even then, detailed, but it wasn't the organization that drew me in, it was the vision. He talked about music like it was architecture, like he was constructing something that would outlast all of us. He had plans, real plans, not the vague, oh, I'm going to be famous, dreams that every kid with a mixtape had, but actual blueprints for building a career, a business, a life. I was different. I saw opportunities where he saw obstacles. Where he wanted to plan every step, I wanted to jump and figure out the landing on the way down. My parents thought I was reckless. His parents thought he was too cautious. But we found each other in the West End of Atlanta, and something clicked into place. We started talking, then we started dreaming together. He told me about the music industry, about how artists were getting exploited, about how the real money wasn't in performing but owning the infrastructure. He wanted to build something that gave artists control. I told him about business, about markets, about how my father had taught me to see patterns in business and chaos. We lived only a few miles away from each other, but we both attended separate schools. It didn't take long for us to figure out that we would rather be together instead of him going to Mays High and me taking the daily trek to North Atlanta High. We were 16 years old and planning an empire while skipping school, catching MARTA buses, and hanging out at the airport or occasionally Lenox Mall, all while doing our best to dodge truancy officers. Our teachers probably thought we were just another high school couple who'd break up before graduation. They didn't understand that we weren't just falling in love, we were forming a partnership, the kind that would survive things we couldn't even imagine yet. By the year 2000, we had our first child on the way. Young parents, too young, everyone said. But we didn't feel too young. We felt ready to build the family we'd been planning, ready to start the business we'd been dreaming about, ready to prove that two kids from nothing could become something. Atlanta in the early 2000s was a city of transformation. The Olympics had come and gone, leaving behind a new infrastructure and new identity. The music scene was exploding. Outkast had put the city on the map, and suddenly everybody wanted a piece of Atlanta's sound. My husband saw the opportunity immediately. Not to be another artist fighting for scrapes, but to be the person who made it possible for artists to be heard. We started small. So small, a desktop computer and some basic Cubase recording software and a dream of creating a professional quality studio time and music video for local artists and venues. He handled the technical side, the sound engineering, the beats, the music production, the meticulous attention to detail that made our work stand out. I handled everything else, graphic design, video production, the clients, the contracts, the money, the constant hustle of keeping a new business alive. Those early years were brutal. We were raising our first child in a tiny apartment, working 18-hour days, living on ramen noodles and ambition. There were nights when I wasn't sure we'd make rent. Nights when the equipment would fall right before a big gig and he'd stay up until dawn fixing it. Nights when I'd look at our baby sleeping and wonder if we were crazy to be doing this, if we should just get normal jobs and give up on the dream. But we didn't give up. He wouldn't let us. That organized, detailed mind of his had mapped out a 5-year plan, and he was determined to execute it. Every setback was a data point. Every failure, just information to feed into the next attempt. He taught me patience. I taught him to take risks. Together, we learned how to build something real. By 2005, we had added 2 additional children to our family and realized our production business wasn't enough to sustain our growing family by itself. My husband took an auto mechanic position at NTB on Cobb Parkway in Marietta. This job offered him to gain experience and certifications, as well as meet and work alongside creative artists, including Tehran, aka T Casino. Although his work days would be long, he consistently made time for his passion and continued to create and release music projects such as Flame on the Track, Hustle to Death, Get 'em Crunk, and Work. By 2010, we had a successful business, not just surviving but thriving. We had steady contracts, reliable income, a growing reputation. We'd moved out of that tiny apartment into a real house. We were living the dream we'd sketched out as teenagers on the back of that MARTA bus. As our business reached its peak in 2013, we began producing a pilot for Celebrity Mamas of Atlanta featuring the mothers of T.I., Tiny, Rashida, Candy Burris, K Camp, and Cash Out. There were many times when King Harris was in our studio expressing his desire to learn how to use our cameras. Even after long days of production, I would make the time to show him the ropes and how to properly use the equipment while giving his grandmother, Diane, a much needed break from all the scripts, lights, and cameras. But Atlanta was changing. The neighborhoods we'd grown up in were getting more dangerous. The schools were struggling. The cost of living was rising while the quality of life was declining. We'd drive past places where we'd fallen in love, where we'd dream our dreams, and they didn't feel like home anymore. They felt like places we needed to escape. I was the first one to say it out loud. We need to leave. He resisted at first. Atlanta was all he knew. His family was there. His roots were there. His entire identity was wrapped up in being from Atlanta. Leaving felt like betrayal, like admitting defeat, like running away from the very place that had made us who we were. But I could see what he couldn't, that staying was a real risk, that our children deserved better than what Atlanta could offer them now, that the business we built was portable, that the skills we developed, they could work anywhere, that the dream didn't have to die just because we changed the location. It took months of conversations, late night debates about safety versus familiarity, opportunity versus comfort, the known versus the unknown. He made spreadsheets comparing cities. I made gut level arguments about what felt right. Our 3 children, still young enough to adapt to anything, played in the background while we planned their future. The decision to leave did not come down to a single moment. We watched as recording studios were being robbed, the owners killed, the artists being targeted and shot. Although we didn't consider ourselves rich at the time, I personally feared that we could be someone's next target. The local news was filled with violence, and the unspoken economic pressures were constant reminders that a change was necessary. The first leap. Leaving Atlanta in 2014 felt like jumping off of a cliff with a parachute we'd packed ourselves, hoping we'd done it right. We broke our lease, packed up the business equipment, loaded 3 kids and decades worth of dreams into our Land Rover, and pointed ourselves north. The plan, his plan, meticulously researched and written down in a notebook, was to find a safer environment with a lower cost of living where we could continue growing the business remotely. The internet had made location increasingly irrelevant for what we did. As long as we had good connectivity and could travel when needed for on-site work, we could operate from anywhere. I pushed for something dramatic, somewhere completely different. He'd advocated for a measured approach, somewhere not too far from what we knew. We compromised on Niagara Falls, Canada. It seemed perfect on paper, safe, beautiful, close enough to major markets that we could still service our clients, far enough from Atlanta that we'd be forced to build something new. The Canadian side of the falls offered a quality of life that felt impossible in Atlanta. Clean streets, good schools, a sense of community that we'd forgotten could exist. Our first attempt to cross the border failed, apparently because we didn't give the correct or good enough reason for visiting. As we approached the border, they asked, "What's your reason for visiting?" As we reply, "To visit and explore the country. This is our first time." We were immediately motioned to park for additional search and questioning. We were eventually denied entry and was forced to find a place to live in Buffalo, New York. We were able to rent a place on Genesee Street to open up our recording studio and begin to build a new life. After a few months of establishing ourselves in New York, we decided to try to cross the border into Canada once more, this time with reservations and a specific plan to tell the Border Patrol agents. Luckily, this worked like a charm. We had booked a week hotel stay, instantly fell in love with the environment, and began researching our options for residency and rental costs and requirements. We rented a small business with a view of the busiest tourist street on this side of the falls. On clear mornings, you could see the rainbow arcing through the midst of the Niagara Falls, and it felt like a sign, like we'd made the right choice. The kids adapted quickly, the way kids do. They started a face painting business, learned to say "a" at the end of sentences, discovered what real winters felt like. But the business struggled. The border crossings for maintaining our Buffalo, New York location and travel became a logistical nightmare. The research on residency led us to apply for refugee status, which also required us to temporarily live in a refugee house about 20 minutes south of our Niagara Falls, Canada studio location. By this time, it's becoming clear that our lives were crazy and not in complete order. We were trying to figure out things as we went along. I wanted to push through, to make it work through sheer force and will. He wanted to reassess, to run new numbers, to admit that maybe we made a mistake. For the first time in my partnership, we were pulling in opposite directions. The argument started small. Disagreements about scheduling, about budgets, about whether to invest in a better equipment or save for uncertainty ahead. But they grew. Late night fights about whether we'd made a terrible mistake leaving Atlanta, whether we should go back, whether we destroyed everything we built chasing a fantasy of safety that didn't exist. Our 3 children heard more than we wanted them to. Kids always do. They'd go quiet when we started raising our voices, disappear into their room, create their own world separate from the chaos of ours. That guilt, knowing we were putting them through instability in the name of giving them stability, it ate at both of us. 6 months into our Canadian experiment, we had to face the truth. It wasn't working. The business was hemorrhaging money. The dream of Niagara Falls was beautiful, but beauty doesn't pay the bills. We had finally put our papers together to apply for residency, and now the Border Patrol agents are interrogating us, flagging our passports, and making our travel long, scary, and inconvenient. During the latest escapade at the border, I'm told I can't re-enter Canada because of something on my criminal record. If I attempt to enter, I was told I would be arrested. By this time, we have our business established in Canada and was forced to leave many items and equipment in Canada. We needed a new plan. Now we've returned to Buffalo, New York, and tried to focus on our production business, grow our clients, and live a somewhat normal life. Our new location near Grand Island, New York was large enough that we could expand our services to offer U-Haul rentals from our studio production house. Finances have stabilized, but not quite enough for us to progress. After calculating our expenses over the years, we concluded that we had spent over $100,000 renting. Our business was sustainable, but our monthly rent was a major debt that I felt we should explore eliminating. This time he took the lead. He'd been researching Detroit, a city in the middle of a massive transformation where real estate was cheap and opportunity was everywhere for people willing to work hard. The automotive industry's collapse had left behind infrastructure and a workforce looking for new directions. The city was rebuilding itself, and we could be a part of that rebuilding. I was skeptical. Detroit had a reputation, and it wasn't good. Crime, poverty, urban decay, all the things we'd left Atlanta to escape. But he showed me the numbers, the neighborhoods that were turning around, the communities that were fighting to make the city work again. He showed me houses that we could actually afford to buy, not just rent. He showed me a path to ownership, to putting down real roots, to building equity instead of just paying someone else's mortgage. And he showed me something else, a chance to prove that we could adapt, that we could take a risk on a city everyone else was writing off, that we could be part of something bigger than just our own survival. I said yes, not because I was convinced, but because I trusted him. Because in all our years together, his careful planning had never steered us completely wrong. Because sometimes in a partnership, you have to let the other person lead, even when you're scared. Detroit dreams. By this time, Craigslist was our source for making our most important purchases in life. Of course, we had to weed out the scams, took a few empty trips to Michigan to view available opportunities, and a few phone calls and a successful business to a property near Dexter and Joy Road. We felt we were ready to take another leap. We bought our first house in Detroit in the summer of 2016 for less than the cost of a decent used car. A 3-bedroom brick home in a neighborhood that was transitional. Real estate code for could go either way. The house needed work, a lot of work, but it was ours. Ownership changed something in us. In Atlanta, we'd been renters, building someone else's equity. In Niagara Falls, we'd been temporary residents, always with one foot out the door. But in Detroit, we were homeowners. We had skin in the game. We had something to build on. My husband threw himself into renovating the house with the same meticulous attention to detail he brought to every audiovisual project. He researched every repair, watched hundreds of YouTube tutorials, created detailed plans for each room. On weekends, he'd be up on the roof fixing shingles or down in the basement addressing foundation issues. The kids would hand him tools, learning the names of things they'd never needed to know in our apartment life. I focused on rebuilding the business. The move to Detroit had cost us some clients, but it had also opened up new opportunities. The city was hungry for the kind of professional media services we provided. Local sports teams, community organizations, small businesses trying to establish an online presence. They all needed what we could offer, and they needed it at prices that they could afford. The breakthrough came in the winter of 2016. A local hockey team needed a videographer to handle their live streaming, and we underbid everyone else just to get our foot in the door. The first game was a disaster. I had never been to a hockey game, and I was extremely underdressed in a windbreaker jacket. My hands and nose were freezing every minute of the game. My legs were numb, and I started to wonder if I made a big mistake accepting this contract. Miraculously, I made it through the first day of games and was able to better prepare for completing the remainder of the first tournament with great success. The next game was flawless. Word spread. Other teams started calling. Then Hockey TV reached out, a major contract to engineer live stream games across their network. It was the kind of opportunity that could make or break us, the kind that required us to invest everything we had into new equipment, into hiring help, into scaling up faster than felt comfortable. I wanted to say yes immediately. He wanted to run the numbers, create projections, and make sure that we could deliver. We compromised. We said yes, but we built in safeguards, backup plans, contingencies for every scenario we could imagine. The Hockey TV contract stabilized. We were close enough to major markets now that travel was manageable, and the cost of living in Detroit meant we could underbid competitors and still make a profit. We hired our first employees, a young videographer who reminded me of my husband at that age. Hungry, talented, willing to work twice as hard as anyone to prove herself. For 2 years, we built. The business grew. The house improved. The neighborhood started to turn around. New families moving in. Community gardens sprouting up. And a sense that maybe Detroit's comeback story was real. Our 3 older children settled into the community better than we'd expected. We found a community of agriculture, which gave us a glimpse of self-sustainability. We started our own small garden and made friends with neighbors who were also betting on the city's future. But I was noticing things, small things at first, then bigger ones. The utility bills were insane. Detroit's energy costs were among the highest in the nation, and our old house was an energy save. We'd spend hundreds of dollars a month just keeping the place warm in the winter, and the bills kept climbing. I'd look at the numbers and feel sick. We were working harder than ever, making more money than ever, and somehow still struggling to get ahead. Then there was the food, real food, healthy food, the kind we wanted to feed our children. It was expensive and hard to find. The nearest grocery store with decent produce was a 30-minute drive. The corner stores in the neighborhood sold processed junk at premium prices. I'd spend hours each week driving around the city to find affordable, healthy options, burning gas and time we didn't have. I started doing research. Reading about energy independence, about sustainable living, about people who'd opted out of the grid entirely. At first, it was just curiosity, a way to understand why our bills were so high and what we could do about it. But the more I read, the more I realized we were trapped in a system designed to keep us dependent, to keep us paying, to keep us running on a treadmill that never stopped. My husband thought I was crazy when I first brought it up. Off-grid living? We just bought this house. We just got stable. You want to upend everything again? But I couldn't let it go. I showed him the numbers, what we were spending on annual property taxes, utilities, on food, on maintaining a lifestyle that was supposed to be affordable, but somehow wasn't. I showed him articles about families who'd built sustainable homes, who'd cut their living costs to almost nothing, who'd created real security instead of the illusion of it. He listened. He always listened. That was one of his gifts, the ability to hear an idea that seemed crazy and actually consider it instead of dismissing it out of hand. He started doing his own research, running his own numbers, documenting everything in his notebook, comparing our current cost to the projected cost of off-grid living. The conversations went late into the night. We'd put the kids to bed and then sit at the kitchen table, laptops open, calculators out, dreaming and planning and arguing and agreeing. He'd point out all of the risk, the upfront cost, the learning curve, the possibility of failure. I'd counter him with long-term benefits, the freedom, the security of not being dependent on systems we couldn't afford. August of 2018, we welcomed a new addition to our family, our first son, Lyric Almighty. We weren't necessarily planning for more children at this point in our journey. However, being able to experience a home birth in a home that we owned was eye-opening. The sense of responsibility and growth, coupled with a new urgency to create an even better environment and lifestyle. The decision crystallized around a simple question. What were we really building? Were we building equity in a house in the city that might or might not recover? Or were we building a life that could withstand whatever came next? In 2019, we put the Detroit house on the market. We'd put enough work into it that we could sell it for more than we'd paid, enough to fund the next phase of our journey. Some of our family and neighbors thought we were crazy. Some thought we were smart. Most just thought that we were restless, unable to settle, always chasing the next thing. They weren't entirely wrong, but they also didn't understand that we weren't running from something. We were running toward something, toward a vision of life that made sense to us, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else. The land. Mid-Missouri wasn't on anyone's list of exciting places to live. No major cities, no cultural attractions, no obvious draws for a young family with an audio-visual business. But it had land, cheap land, and it had something else. A growing community of people who'd opted out of conventional living and were building something different. We found our property online, scrolling through listings late at night after the kids were asleep. 5 acres of wooded hills in the Ozarks, far enough from civilization to be truly off-grid, but close enough to a small town for supplies and internet access. The price was less than we'd made selling the Detroit house. We could buy it outright, no mortgage, no debt, no monthly payments hanging over our heads. My husband wanted to visit before we committed. I wanted to buy it immediately. We compromised. On the day we sold the house, we drove out to Missouri with the kids and we walked the property. It was beautiful in a way that city people don't understand. Not manicured or designed, but wild and real. Trees everywhere. A small creek running through one corner. Hills that rolled away into the distance. The kids ran through the woods like they'd been unleashed, discovering things they'd never seen in Atlanta or Detroit. Deer tracks, wild turkey, the kind of silence that only exists far from cities. Standing on that land, looking at my husband, looking at our children, I knew that we were going to do this. I could see him calculating, planning, figuring out where to build and how to make it work. I could see the fear in his eyes, the fear of the unknown, fear of making another mistake, fear of uprooting our family again. But I could also see excitement, the same excitement I'd seen at that bus stop when we talked about building something that mattered. We bought the land in late 2019. Then came the hard part, figuring out how to live on it. We started by purchasing a 26-foot camper and a $500 generator. We would have a place to live and sleep while we built our future forever home. Traditional home construction was out of our budget. Even if we could afford it, the timeline was too long and the risk too high. We needed something that we could build ourselves, something modular, adaptable, something that fit our budget and our vision: shipping containers. The idea came from my research into alternative housing. Shipping containers were cheap, structurally sound, and could be modified into livable spaces with the right knowledge and tools. People all over the world were building shipping container homes, and the results ranging from basic shelters to architectural masterpieces. My husband loved the concept immediately. It appeared to his organized mind. The containers were standardized, predictable, easy to plan around. We could buy them used for a fraction of what traditional building materials would cost. We could stack them, connect them, modify them to create exactly the space we needed. We bought 3 40-foot containers and had them delivered to the property. They sat there like giant metal boxes, waiting to be transformed. The kids thought they were the coolest thing ever. Our oldest kids would climb on them, play in them, imagine what they'd become. I'd watch them and think about how different their childhood was from mine, from their fathers, from anything we'd planned. The work began in spring 2020. My husband took the lead on design and construction, creating detailed plans for how containers would be arranged, how they'd be insulated, and how we'd handle the water and power and waste. I handled logistics, ordering materials, scheduling deliveries, managing the budget, keeping the business running while we built our new life. We learned as we went how to prepare the foundation, how to insulate against Missouri's brutal summers and harsh winters, how to install windows in metal walls, how to create a home from industrial materials. Every mistake was a lesson, every success a small victory. The business kept us afloat during construction. The hockey TV contracts were steady, and we picked up new clients who didn't care where we were based if we delivered quality work. My husband would spend mornings on the property, building, and afternoons in a small office we'd rented in town, handling client work. I'd juggle the kids, the business administration, and 1,000 details that go into creating a life from scratch. By February 2020, we had something resembling a home. 3 containers arranged parallel. They would be connected by covered walkways with a central courtyard where the kids could play, solar panels on the roof, a well for water, a septic system we'd install ourselves. It wasn't started yet, but we had the floor plans ready, and the camper was still livable. The business continued to grow. We were traveling more for hockey TV contracts, but we always came back to our land, our containers, our life that we'd built from nothing. Life was hard, but it was good. We were making it work. We created a plan for something sustainable, something that could weather whatever storms came our way. We had no idea what storm was coming. The world stops. March 2020 started like any other month. My husband was preparing for the spring hockey season, our busiest time of the year. The hockey TV contracts were locked in. The schedules were set. The equipment was ready. We'd built our business to the point where we could predict our income months in advance, where we had stability and security and a clear path forward. Then it stopped. COVID-19 wasn't just a health crisis. It was an economic apocalypse for people like us. Sports shut down overnight, not postponed, not delayed, but completely shut down. No games meant no live streams. No live streams meant no contracts. No contracts meant no income. The first cancellation email came on March 12th, then another, then another. Within a week, every contract we had was suspended indefinitely. 2 decades of building, of relationships, of reputation, gone in days. I watched my husband read the emails, his face getting tighter with each one. He didn't panic. That wasn't his style. He opened a spreadsheet and started calculating how long we could survive on our savings. The answer wasn't good. We had plans of building our off-grid life to minimize expenses, but we still had costs. Construction materials, solar panels to buy, equipment to maintain, vehicles to fuel, food to buy, 2 older children, and baby Lyric to care for. The land was paid off, but land doesn't feed you. The generator still needed gas for us to have electricity in the camper. For the first time since we met in high school, we had no plan, no backup, no clear path forward. The careful system my husband had built, the risk-taking instincts I'd relied on, none of it mattered when the entire economy shut down. The first month was the worst. We watched our savings drain while the news got worse and worse. The pandemic wasn't going away. Sports weren't coming back. The clients who promised to resume contracts when things normalized started going out of business themselves. The entire infrastructure we built our lives around was collapsing. Lyric, still a baby, was oblivious. I'd hold him and I think about how we brought him into this world that was falling apart, how we'd chosen this life of independence, and now that independence meant we had no safety net, no unemployment insurance, no corporate structure to catch us when we fell. The arguments came back, not the productive debates we'd had about where to live or how to build, but the desperate fight of people who are scared and don't know what to do. I wanted to take any work that we could find immediately, even if it meant abandoning everything we built. He wanted to wait to see if the contracts would resume, to not make any hasty decision we regret. But waiting required money we don't have. By May, we would be burning through the last of our savings. We needed income and we needed it fast. The opportunity came from the most unexpected place. Dollar General. The retail chain was expanding aggressively during the pandemic, remodeling stores across the country to handle increased demand. They needed contractors who could travel, who could work fast, who were desperate enough to accept the terms they were offering. We were all three. The work was simple in concept, brutal in execution. We traveled to a Dollar General location, gut the interior, rebuild it according to corporate specifications, and move on to the next one. The pay was decent. The schedule was punishing. The conditions, whatever we could find, cheap motels, the back of our truck, anywhere we could crash between jobs. My husband hated it immediately. It was everything he'd spent his career avoiding. Mindless physical labor, no creativity, no ownership, just following someone else's instructions for someone else's profit. But it was money, regular money, enough to stop the bleeding and to start rebuilding our savings. I hated it for different reasons. The management was incompetent, the safety standards were non-existent, and the way they treated workers was degrading. But I also saw it as temporary, as a means to an end, as the price we had to pay to survive until we could figure out what came next. We started in April 2020. The first job was in West Virginia, a 14-hour drive from our Missouri land. We packed up the kids, loaded our tools, and became a traveling construction crew. Our older children had to adapt to a new kind of stability. No permanent home, no weekly community meetups, just constant movement from one town to the next. Lyric, still under 2 years old, spent his days in a pack and play in our hotels near the job site. I'd work alongside my husband when I could, handle the kids when I couldn't, try to keep some resemblance of normal life going while everything was in chaos. The work itself was straightforward. Demo the old fixtures, install the new ones, paint, clean, move on. My husband's attention to detail made us fast and efficient. My willingness to push through exhaustion kept us going when the schedule got brutal. We became a good team again, united by necessity, if not by choice. But the toll was real. Living out of motels with our children, eating fast food because there was no kitchen, watching our older children try to study and do schoolwork on laptops as we traveled across the country, seeing Lyric hit developmental milestones in the hotel rooms instead of in the home we built for him. The other contractors we met were in similar situations. People who lost everything in the pandemic and were scrambling to survive. Some were grateful for the work. Others were bitter about what they lost. All of us were just trying to make it through. We worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. The money was good enough that we started saving again, building a cushion, creating options. By September, we'd been on the road for 6 months and had completed 15 remodels. We were exhausted, but we were surviving. That's when the management issues started getting worse. Dollar General's corporate structure was a nightmare of conflicting directives and incompetent middle managers. We'd get instructions for a remodel, completed to spec, then have managers on site constantly harass my husband and I. Staff would arrive late or not at all. Safety concerns would be ignored until someone got hurt. I personally witnessed multiple employees impacted by products falling from shelves during remodels. My husband, with his organized mind and attention to detail, couldn't handle the chaos. He tried to create systems to establish clear communication, to do things right. The managers didn't care. They just wanted the work done fast and cheap. Quality be damned. I tried to be the buffer, to smooth things over, to keep us employed, but even I had limits. For the previous few weeks, the managers would degrade and talk disrespectfully to me and my husband in front of fellow contractors. One night in late August, after working over 12 hours, I was completing a task while occasionally staying hydrated with my personal water bottle. As I adjusted my focus from the products, I began to search for my water to quench my thirst. Now, it's apparent my water magically disappeared. I immediately confronted the management in their office and noticed my missing water bottle in their trash bin. This was the moment I realized this position would not last much longer. It was time to have a serious talk with my husband. We'd survived leaving Atlanta. We'd survived the failed attempt in Niagara Falls. We'd survived building a life from shipping containers. We survived a global pandemic destroying our business. But we couldn't survive working with people who treated us like we were disposable. The decision to quit came in September 2020. After 7 months on the road, we saved enough to give us breathing room, enough to make a choice instead of just reacting to circumstances. We were in a motel in Moline, Illinois, the kids asleep, when my husband said, "We need to stop this." I agreed. Not because I had a better plan, but because I could see what the work was doing to him, to us, to our family. We'd sacrificed too much to build a life of intention, to spend it being ground down by a system that didn't value us. But quitting meant we were back where we'd started. No income, no clear path forward, no plan, except this time we had something we hadn't had before. We had about $30,000 in savings. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to take a risk. Enough to try something new. Enough to reinvent ourselves one more time. Game changer, the pivot. The conversation happened in that Illinois motel room, with our children sleeping in the next room and the weight of an uncertain future pressing down on us. We'd quit Dollar General. We had maybe 6 months of saving if we were careful. We needed a new direction, and we needed it fast. My husband opened his notebook and started making a list. It's what he always did when facing a big decision. Organize the information, analyze the options, create a framework for moving forward. But this time was different. This time, we weren't just choosing between existing opportunities. We were creating something from nothing. What do we know how to do, he asked. Audiovisual production, I said. But that market's dead until sports come back. Construction, he added. We just spent 6 months remodeling stores. We remodeled our own house, I said, in Detroit. And we made a foundation for our shipping containers on our land. We know more about construction than we did 6 months ago. We know about real estate, he said slowly. We've bought and sold houses. We understood markets, property values, renovation costs. That's when it clicked. Real estate. Not as homeowners, but as investors, as flippers, as people who could buy distressed properties, fix them up, and sell them for profit. We had the skills. We had the knowledge. We had just enough capital to get started. I felt that familiar rush of excitement, the same feeling I'd had when we decided to leave Atlanta, when we bought the house in Detroit, the Missouri land, when we took every major risk that had defined our lives. This could work. This could be the thing that replaced the business we'd lost. My husband was more cautious. We don't know the market. We've never done this professionally. We could lose everything. We've already lost everything, I said. We lost our business. We lost our stability. We spent 7 months living in motels, working for people who treated us like garbage. What's left to lose? He smiled at that. It was true. We'd been stripped down to nothing and had survived. We'd proven we could adapt, could learn, could build something from scratch. Why not do it again? The research phase began immediately. My husband created spreadsheets analyzing different markets, comparing property values, calculating potential returns. I started scouring online listings, learning to spot opportunities, understanding what made a property a good flip versus a money pit. We focused on mid-Illinois. We were near the area with a free week from working at Dollar General. The pandemic had created chaos in the real estate market, people fleeing cities, others losing homes to foreclosure, properties sitting empty because owners couldn't manage them remotely. There were opportunities everywhere for people who knew how to look. The first property we seriously considered was a disaster, a 3-bedroom ranch that had been abandoned for 2 years with water and fire damage, structural issues, and a price that seemed too good to be true. My husband ran the numbers and determined we need to invest more in repairs than we'd make on this sale. I wanted to do it anyway, to just jump in and learn by doing. He talked me down, reminded me that our first flip needed to be a success, not a learning experience we couldn't afford. We kept looking and looking and looking. For every property that seemed promising, there were a dozen reasons not to buy it. Too expensive, too damaged, wrong location, bad title. The market was competitive, and there were newcomers trying to break in with limited capital and no track record. Then we found a small 2-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, foreclosed and sitting empty for a year. The price was reasonable. We noticed mold and water damage in the bathroom. The location was good. My husband's spreadsheet showed a potential profit of about $25,000 if we could complete the renovation in 3 months and sell quickly. We made an offer. It was accepted. Suddenly, we were real estate investors. The fear hit immediately. We just committed most of our savings to a property we'd only seen in photos and a brief walkthrough. We were betting everything on the ability to renovate and sell a house in a market we didn't fully understand during a pandemic that was still raging, with our kids depending on us not to screw this up. My husband dealt with the fear by planning. He created a detailed renovation schedule, breaking down every task, every cost, every timeline. He researched contractors, material suppliers, comparable sales in the area. He built a model that accounted for every variable he could think of. I dealt with the fear by moving forward. We closed on the property in November 2020, and I was on site the next day, sledgehammer in hand, ready to start demo. Our older children helped where they could, learning about construction and real estate and what it meant to take a risk on your own vision. Lyric, now almost 3, played in the yard while we worked. I'd watched him through the window, this little boy who'd been born into our off-grid dream and had spent his early years traveling the country in the back of a truck. And I think about what kind of life we were building for him, for our children. Not a conventional life, not a safe life, but a life where they saw their parents refuse to give up, refuse to settle, refuse to accept limitations. The renovation was harder than we expected. It's always harder than you expect. We found problems the inspection had missed. Electrical issues, plumbing that needed to be replaced, foundation and crawl space that required attention. Each problem ate into our budget and our timeline. But we learned from Dollar General. We learned from building our foundation from our container home. We learned from every challenge we'd face. We knew how to adapt, how to problem solve, how to keep moving forward even when things went wrong. My husband's attention to detail saved us repeatedly. He'd catch issues before they became disasters, find cost-effective solutions, maintain quality while staying on budget. Our willingness to work 12-hour days kept us on schedule. Together, we made it work. Early 2022. We are now expecting another baby. We have a couple of teenagers, a half-finished house flip, and a future that was completely uncertain. Most people would have seen this as insanity. We saw it as life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. I'm in a rush to finish this flip before our next child is born. With the entire family working together, we were able to get this house ready for the market by the summer. By August 2022, our daughter, Suri Almighty, has been born and our home in Illinois has been sold. We can now consider ourselves experienced in flipping real estate, looking for our next deal. With the construction cost of our shipping container increasing by the month, we felt that we needed to invest into another flip before completing the construction on our land. A decision was made to invest in the well water immediately as the price had doubled since COVID. Suri came home to our cabin near our Missouri land, the place we built the foundation for our future container home with our own hands. Lyric, now a big brother, was fascinated by her. Our older children, veterans of our family's constant reinvention, took the new addition in stride. We were growing, evolving, becoming something we'd never planned, but somehow always knew we'd be. The Illinois house flip was completed by September 2022, 1 month behind schedule, but under budget. We listed it immediately, priced competitively based on my husband's market analysis. It sold in 3 months. After all costs, we cleared $60,000 in profit. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was proof that we could do this, proof that we'd found a new path forward, proof that we could reinvent ourselves one more time. Purchasing a cabin in a gated community 2 hours from our land was the best option we had at the time. The cost was $40,000 and was livable, but in need of a few upgrades and new appliances. We celebrated that night at our cabin, all 6 of us, looking at the stars through the Missouri sky. Our older children understood what the sale meant, that we'd found a way forward, that we weren't going back to Dollar General, that we'd created something sustainable. Lyric and Suri were too young to understand, but they'd grow up knowing their parents as people who refused to quit, who found ways to survive and thrive no matter what the world threw at them. My husband was already planning his next flip. I was already scouting properties. We had to give ourselves some time to adjust to our new dynamics, but we never lost focus of our goals. We found our new business, our new purpose, our new way of building the life we wanted. The journey from the hoods of Atlanta to the woods of Missouri has taken us through more transformations than we'd ever imagined. Music artists to business owners, city dwellers to off-grid pioneers, essential workers to real estate investors. Each change had stripped away something we thought we needed and revealed something we didn't know we had. We weren't done changing. We'd never be done. But we learned to embrace the change, to see it as not a threat, but as an opportunity. To trust ourselves, to trust each other. Trust that we could handle whatever came next, because we always had. Building momentum. The second flip was easier. Not easy. Nothing about real estate investing is easy, but easier. We knew what to look for now. We understood the process. We'd proven to ourselves that we could do this. We found a cabin in a gated neighborhood that was transitioning. Not the best area, not the worst. The kind of place where young families were starting to move in, where property values were slowly climbing, and a well-renovated house could stand out and sell quickly. The purchase price was higher than our first flip, which meant more risk, but also more potential profit. My husband ran the numbers obsessively, creating scenarios for the best case, worst case, and everything in between. I pushed for us to move faster, to trust our instincts, to not overthink it. We bought the property in September 2022. This time we had a system. My husband had managed the renovation schedule and our budget. I handled the material sourcing and contractor coordination. Our older children helped with the demo and the cleanup, earning money for the first time in their lives and learning what it meant to work for something. Lyric and Suri stayed with us on site when we could manage it, playing in rooms we were renovating, growing up surrounded by the smell of paint and sawdust and the sound of their parents building something. It wasn't a conventional childhood, but it was ours. The renovation took 6 months. The older children moved back to Atlanta, and we'd gotten faster, more efficient. We knew which corners we could cut and which required perfection. We understood what buyers in this market wanted: updated kitchens, modern bathrooms, neutral colors, good bones. We'd replaced the income we'd lost when COVID destroyed our audiovisual business. We created something sustainable, something that could support our family and our off-grid lifestyle. But more than that, we created something that was ours. No clients to please, no corporate structure to navigate, no managers to answer to, just us, our skills, our vision, and our willingness to work harder than anyone else. The business evolved as we learned. We started buying properties that needed more work, which meant less competition and higher potential profits. We developed relationships with contractors who understood our standards and our budgets. We learned to spot opportunities that other investors missed, properties with title issues we could resolve, estates that needed quick sales, foreclosures that scared off less expensive buyers. My husband's organized mind was perfect for this work. He created systems for everything: property evaluation, renovation planning, budget tracking, market analysis. He could look at a distressed property and see exactly what it would take to transform it, down to the dollar and the day. My risk tolerance was equally valuable. I'd push us to take on properties he thought were too challenging, to move faster than felt comfortable, to trust our abilities even when the numbers were tight. Sometimes I was wrong and we'd lose money or time, but more often I was right, and we'd find opportunities that more cautious investors passed on. Together, we were formidable. He kept us from making reckless mistakes. I kept us from being too conservative. We balanced each other, challenged each other, made each other better. The kids grew up in this world. Our children gained experience at property evaluation, learning to spot foundation issues and roof problems, electrical red flags. They understood markets and margins and what it took to turn a profit. They were getting an education in entrepreneurship that no school could provide. Lyric, growing from a toddler to a little boy, thought everyone's parents bought broken houses and fixed them. He'd walk through properties with us, pointing out things that needed repair, asking questions about why we were doing what we were doing. At 3 years old, he could tell you the difference between cosmetic damage and structural issues. Suri, still a baby, came to a job sites in a carrier, sleeping through the sound of power tools and construction noise. She'd grow up not knowing any other life, not understanding that most families didn't spend their weekends renovating houses and their evenings analyzing real estate markets. We'd gone from desperate Dollar General contractors to successful real estate investors in less than 2 years. We'd proven that reinvention was possible, that you could lose everything and build it back differently, with the skills you developed in one area of life could transfer to another if you're willing to learn and adapt. But success brought new challenges. The real estate market was getting more complex. Investors with more capital were driving up prices. The easier opportunities were getting harder to find. We needed to evolve again, to find our edge, to find out what we could do that others couldn't or wouldn't. My husband loved these challenges. They required the kind of detailed problem solving that played to his strengths. He researched solutions, consult with specialists, create plans for addressing issues that seemed insurmountable. He turned problem properties into opportunities. I loved them for different reasons. They were less competitive, which meant better prices. They'd require creativity and vision, seeing what a property could become rather than what it was. They were risks that most people wouldn't take, which meant bigger potential rewards. These flips taught us something important. We weren't just real estate investors. We were problem solvers. We were people who could see opportunity in chaos, who could take on complexity that scared others away, who could turn disasters into success through sheer determination and skill. We'd come a long way from the bus stops in Atlanta, from young parents with a dream to successful entrepreneurs who'd survive a pandemic, reinvent themselves multiple times, and built a life that was entirely their own. Our older 3 children were grown now, with skills and knowledge that set them apart from their peers. They understood business, understood real estate, understood what it took to build something for nothing. They'd seen their parents lose everything and rebuild. They'd learned that security doesn't come from a job or a paycheck, but your ability to adapt and create value. Lyric, now 5, was already talking about the houses he'd flip when he grew up. He'd walk through properties with us, make observations that were surprisingly insightful for a kindergartner. He'd absorbed our entrepreneur mindset without us even trying to teach it. Suri, at 2, was just starting to understand that our family was different. The other kids' parents went to offices, while hers went to construction sites. That other families had one home, while we had our container home on our land and whatever property we were currently renovating. We'd built something sustainable, not just a business, but a way of life, a way of thinking about risk and opportunity and what it meant to create security in an uncertain world. The journey from the hoods to the woods taught us that home isn't a place. It's what you build with the people you love, using whatever materials life gives you. We built foundations for our shipping container and remodeled distressed properties with sheer determination. We built a family that could weather any storm. We built a life that was messy and complicated and beautiful and entirely ours. And we're just getting started. Lessons from the journey. Looking back on everything we'd been through, from Atlanta to Buffalo to Niagara Falls to Detroit to Illinois to our Missouri land. Looking back on everything we'd been through, from Atlanta to Buffalo to Niagara Falls to Detroit to our Missouri land to 2 successful house flips, I could see patterns, lessons we'd learned the hard way, through failure and success and everything in between. These weren't abstract principles from business books. These were truths we discovered by living them, by making mistakes and learning from them, by refusing to give up when giving up would have been easier. Lesson 1. Comfort is the enemy of growth. When we were comfortable in Atlanta, we had a successful business, a nice house, a predictable life. Leaving that comfort was terrifying, but staying would have been worse. We would have stagnated, would have accepted limitations, would have taught our children that security meant accepting whatever life handed you. Every major growth in our lives came from leaving comfort behind, leaving Atlanta for Canada, leaving conventional housing for off-grid living, leaving the audio-visual business for real estate investing. Each time we had to let go of something we knew for something uncertain. The lesson: if you're comfortable, you're probably not growing. Real transformation requires stepping into the unknown, accepting uncertainty, trusting that you'll figure it out as you go. Lesson 2. Your partner's weaknesses are your strengths. My husband and I are opposite in many ways. He's cautious, I'm impulsive. He plans everything, I trust my gut. He sees risks, I see opportunities. Early in our relationship, we fought about these differences. We tried to change each other, to make the other person more like ourselves. But our success came from embracing our differences. His careful planning kept us from making reckless mistakes. My willingness to take risks kept us from being paralyzed by fear. Together, we could do things that neither of us could do alone. The lesson: don't try to find a partner who's just like you. Find someone who compliments you, who's strong when you're weak, who sees what you miss. Then learn to trust their perspective even when it conflicts with yours. Lesson 3. Systems beat motivation. There were plenty of days when we didn't feel motivated, days when we were exhausted, discouraged, ready to quit. If we'd relied on motivation to keep going, we would have failed. What saved us was systems. My husband's detailed planning, his spreadsheets, his schedules and process. When we didn't feel like working, the system told us what to do next. When we didn't know if we could finish a project, the system broke it down into manageable steps. Motivation is emotional and temporary. Systems are practical and permanent. Build systems that work even when you don't feel like it, and you'll accomplish things that motivated people who lack systems never will. Lesson 4. Your children are watching. We didn't set out to teach our children about entrepreneurship or resilience or risk-taking. We were just trying to survive, to build a life that made sense to us. But our children were watching everything. They watched us leave security for uncertainty. They watched us lose the business and refuse to give up. They watched us work 18-hour days renovating houses. They watched us make mistakes and learn from them. They watched us support each other through fear and doubt and exhaustion. Those lessons, the ones they absorbed by watching us live our lives, were more valuable than anything we could have taught them directly. They learned that failure isn't final, that you can reinvent yourself, that security comes from your skills and determination rather than from a job or a paycheck. The lesson: you're teaching your children every day, whether you intend to or not. Make sure you're teaching them through your actions, not just your words. Lesson 5, quality of life isn't about money. We made good money in Atlanta with our audiovisual business. We made even more money with the real estate investing. But our quality of life was highest when we were living in our camper on our Missouri land before we achieve financial success. Quality of life is about autonomy, about living according to your values, about having time with the people you love. It's about waking up and knowing that you're building something that matters to you, not just making money for someone else. We were happier on our land with uncertain income than we'd been in our Atlanta homes with steady paychecks because we were free to make our own choices, free to take risks, free to build the life we wanted rather than accepting the life we were supposed to want. The lesson: don't sacrifice quality of life for financial security. Real security comes from knowing you can create value, adapt to change, and build what you need from whatever materials life gives you. Lesson 6, the market rewards problem solvers. Our biggest profits in real estate came from properties that other investors avoided. The houses with serious issues, the complicated situations, the deals that required expertise and patience and willingness to deal with complexity. Most people want easy opportunities. They want the obvious deals, the simple renovations, the guaranteed profits. But those opportunities are competitive and low margin. The real money is in solving problems that others can't or won't solve. This is true in any market, any industry. If you can solve problems that scare other people away, you'll always have opportunities. You'll always be valuable. You'll always be able to create an income. The lesson: don't look for easy opportunities. Develop skills to handle difficult ones. The market always rewards people who can solve problems that others avoid. Lesson 7, failure is information. We failed at Niagara Falls. We failed at our first attempt to find a property to flip. We failed at dozens of small things along the way. But we didn't see those failures as endings. We saw them as information. Niagara Falls taught us what didn't work, which helped us make better decisions about Detroit. Our failed property searches taught us what to look for and what to avoid. Every mistake gave us data to feed into our next attempt. My husband's analytical mind was perfect for this. He documented where we went wrong, figure out why, create systems to prevent the same mistake twice. Failure wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was something to learn from. The lesson: failure is only final if you quit. If you keep going, failure is information that makes your next attempt more likely to succeed. Lesson 8, sustainability requires ownership. We learned this lesson the hard way with Dollar General. We were working hard, making decent money, but we had no ownership. We were trading our time and skills for a paycheck, building someone else's business instead of our own. Real sustainability requires ownership, owning your business, owning your home, owning your skills and your reputation and your ability to create value. When you own something, you have equity. You have something that can grow, that can be sold, that can support you even when you're not actively working. Our container home was paid off. We bought it outright. Our real estate business was ours. We owned the properties, the systems, the relationships. That ownership gave us security that no job could. The lesson: don't just work for money. Work to build ownership in something that has lasting value. Equity beats income every time. Lesson 9, community matters more than location. We moved from Atlanta to Buffalo to Niagara Falls to Detroit to rural Missouri. Each place was different. But what made each place work or not work wasn't the location. It was the community we found or failed to find. In Niagara Falls, we were isolated. Although we built a business to connect and build relationships, we failed to create the support network that makes a place feel like home. In Missouri, we found a community of people who'd also chosen alternative lifestyles, who understood what we were trying to build, who supported us and challenged us and made us better. You can live anywhere if you have community. It can be extremely difficult to live anywhere without it. The lesson: invest in relationships, find your people, build communities wherever you are. The quality of your life depends more on who you're surrounded by than where you're located. Lesson 10, you're more capable than you think. This is a big one. The lesson that underlies everything else. We didn't know how to build a house from shipping containers when we started. We didn't know how to flip properties when we bought our first one. We didn't know how to survive a pandemic destroying our business. We didn't know how to do any of the things that we ended up doing. But we figured it out. We learned. We adapted. We proved to ourselves over and over that we were more capable than we thought. That we could handle challenges we never faced before, that we could build skills we didn't have. Most people underestimate themselves. They see a challenge and assume they can't handle it. They see an opportunity and assume they're not qualified. They limit themselves based on what they've done before rather than what they're capable of learning. We stopped limiting ourselves. We started assuming that we could figure things out, that we could learn what we needed to know, that we could handle whatever came next. And that assumption became self-fulfilling. The lesson: you're more capable than you think. You can learn what you need to learn. You can handle more than you believe you can. Stop limiting yourself based on your past and start building based on your potential. The lessons learned weren't theoretical. They were earned through years of struggle and success, through mistakes and victories, through the daily work of building a life that was entirely our own. We didn't have all the answers, and we still don't. But we learned to trust ourselves, to trust each other, to trust that we could handle whatever came next. We learned that security doesn't come from avoiding risk. It comes from knowing you can handle risk, that you can adapt and learn and build what you need. Our journey from the hoods of Atlanta and Detroit to the woods of Missouri, from music and audio visual production to off-grid living and real estate investing, had taught us that transformation is always possible, that you can lose everything and rebuild, that you can change the game and reinvent yourself as many times as necessary, that the life you want is always available if you're willing to work for it and refuse to give up. These lessons shaped how we approached every new challenge, every new opportunity, every new phase of our constantly evolving lives. They were foundations we built on, the principles we returned to when things got hard, the truths we learned by living them. And they were the lessons we're passing on to our children, not through lectures or lessons, but through the daily example of how we live our lives. Conclusion. The view from here. It's now summer of 2024, and I'm writing this from our cabin in mid-Missouri. It's early morning. The sun is coming up over the trees. Lyric is asleep. Suri is starting to stir in her crib. My husband is already up, sitting at his desk, reviewing listings for our next property. This is our life now. Quiet mornings in the woods, property flips that fund our lifestyles, children growing up, watching us build something from nothing. It's not the life we planned when we met in Atlanta 25 years ago. It's better. The journey. We started with a dream and a willingness to work. We built a successful business in Atlanta, providing studio time for artists and video for corporate events, thinking we'd found our path. We left that success behind when Atlanta became a place we no longer recognized, when the violence and chaos made us realize that money means nothing if you're not safe. We searched for something better. Niagara Falls, Detroit, mid-Missouri. We had plans to build an off-grid home from shipping containers, learning to live with less, to value quality of life over consumption. Those plans got postponed, changed. We lost everything when COVID-19 hit. Every contract, every client, every dollar of predictable income. We became essential workers, traveling the country, remodeling Dollar General stores, living in motels, wondering if we'd ever find stability again. We quit that job when the chaos became unbearable. We realized that we were trading our sanity for a paycheck. We pivoted to real estate, investing with $30,000 in savings and no idea what we were doing. We made mistakes. We underestimated cost. We overpaid for properties. We discovered new surprises behind drywall and underneath floors. But we learned. We adapted. We built systems. We found our team. And slowly, property by property, we built a business that gave us freedom. What we've learned about resilience. Resilience isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up every time you do. We fell down a lot. We fell when we left Atlanta and realized Niagara Falls wasn't the answer. We fell when we bought our Detroit house and watched our utility bills skyrocket. We fell when COVID-19 destroyed our business overnight. We fell when we quit Dollar General with no backup plan. We fell on our first property flip when we underestimated the cost and barely broke even. Every time we got back up, not because we were special or talented or lucky, but because we didn't have a choice. We had children depending on us. We had a vision of the life we wanted to build, and we had each other. Resilience is a choice you make every day. Keep going or give up. We chose to keep going. What we've learned about partnership. My husband and I are opposites in almost every way. He's organized, detailed, analytical. He makes spreadsheets for everything. He plans 3 steps ahead. I'm intuitive, risk-taking, big picture. I make decisions based on gut feelings, and I leap before I look. Early in our marriage, these differences caused conflict. I thought he was too cautious. He thought I was too reckless. But over time, we learned that our differences were our strength. His caution kept us from making impulsive decisions. My risk-taking pushed us to seize opportunities he would have passed on. His system kept us organized and on track. My intuition helped us see potential that numbers alone didn't reveal. His analytical mind calculated ROI. My gut feeling identified neighborhoods on the verge of transformation. We needed both. Every successful partnership, business or personal, is built on complementary strengths. You don't need a partner who's just like you. You need a partner who's strong where you're weak. What we've learned about changing the game. You're not stuck with the life you have. You can leave the city for the country. You can leave a successful business for an uncertain future. You can leave a stable job for entrepreneurship. You can reinvent yourself at any age, in any circumstance, with any number of resources. But reinvention requires 3 things. Willingness to let go. You can't build a new life while clinging on to your old one. We had to let go of Atlanta. Even though we built a successful business there, we had to let go of our audiovisual business, even though we spent years building it. We had to let go of the security of paychecks, even though we had children to support. Letting go is terrifying, but it's necessary. Willingness to learn. Reinvention means becoming a beginner again. We knew nothing about off-grid living when we started. We learned. We knew nothing about real estate investing when we started. We learned. We made mistakes. We asked questions. We read books. We watched videos. We talked to people who've done what we wanted to do. Learning is uncomfortable, but necessary. Willingness to persist. Reinvention doesn't happen overnight. It took us 6 months of traveling as essential workers before we saved enough to start investing in real estate. It took us a year of property flips before we felt confident in our business. Persistence is exhausting, but it's necessary. If you're willing to let go, learn, and persist, you can reinvent yourself. What we learned about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not about having a brilliant idea or taking a big risk or being fearless. It's about solving problems. Every business is just a solution to a problem. Our audiovisual business solved the problem of how to stream live events professionally. Our real estate business solves the problem of how to turn distressed properties into homes people want to buy. The entrepreneurs who succeed are the ones who, number one, identify real problems that people will pay to solve. Number two, develop solutions that work. Number three, deliver consistently, even when it's hard. And number four, adapt when circumstances change. We've done this twice now. Once our audiovisual business, once with our real estate business. We'll probably do it again because circumstances change. Markers shift, opportunities emerge. Entrepreneurship is not a destination. It's a way of thinking, always looking for problems to solve, always willing to learn new skills, always adapting to change. What our children are learning. Our older children watched us leave Atlanta. They watched us build a home from shipping containers. They watched us lose our business and become essential workers. They watched us pivot to real estate. Lyric, born in 2018, has never known a normal life. He's grown up traveling to property flips, watching his parents work. Suri, born in 2022, in the middle of our chaos, came home to a small cabin in a family in transition. What are they learning? They're learning that security doesn't come from a job or a paycheck. It comes from skills, adaptability, and willingness to work. They're learning that you don't need permission to build the life you want. You just need vision and persistence. They're learning that failure isn't final. It's feedback. They're learning that family sticks together, especially when things are hard. They're learning that you can leave the hoods for the woods, lose everything, and build it back again. These lessons are worth more than any inheritance we could leave them. A way out from the hoods to the woods. What it really means. From the hoods to the woods isn't just about geography, leaving the city for the country. It's about leaving behind what doesn't serve you and building something better. It's about rejecting the script society hands you. Get a job, buy a house in the suburbs, work until you retire, and writing your own. It's about choosing quality of life over consumption, sustainability over convenience, freedom over security. It's about being willing to look crazy to people who don't understand your vision. When we left Atlanta, people thought we were crazy. When we built the home from shipping containers, people thought we were crazy. When we quit our Dollar General job with no backup plan, people thought we were crazy. And maybe we were. But we built the life we wanted, and that's not crazy. It's intentional. What's next? We're not done. We'll keep flipping properties as long as it makes sense. We'll keep building our real estate portfolio. We'll keep teaching our children through example. But we're also looking ahead. We're exploring international business opportunities. We're considering what comes after real estate. We're thinking about how to build something that lasts beyond us. Because entrepreneurship isn't about building one successful business. It's about building the skill and the mindset to succeed in any circumstance. We've proven we can do that. We've changed the game and reinvented ourselves twice. And we can do it again. A message to you. If you're listening to this, you're probably going through a transition. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe your business is struggling. Maybe you're stuck in a life that doesn't fit anymore. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you don't know what to do next. Maybe you feel like you're too old, too broke, too inexperienced to start over. You're not. We started with nothing. We made every mistake you can make. We failed more times than we succeeded. But keep going. And if we can do it, you can too. Thank you so much for listening to A Way Out, From the Hoods to the Woods. Please be sure to visit our YouTube page or search A Way Out, From the Hoods to the Woods, and enjoy our 2-hour documentary that coincides with this book. There are many things in the documentary that we were not able to include in the book, so please enjoy the documentary. We hope that you enjoy this book, and we hope that we have inspired you to make your way. Ciao.
He's sitting right here on the ground right now. My husband is standing in front of him.
Atlanta police said there was a shootout in front of the recording studio and a popular local rapper was killed.
So when it was time to leave Atlanta, I was ready to go. This is our house, Detroit, Michigan. We are leaving it.
You just an ungrateful human being, and ain't nothing gonna happen for you because you ungrateful and you feel like the world owe you something, and he don't. You gotta build those skills. You just gotta throw yourself in the fire sometimes.
I agree with that.
Those skills.
Sometimes I agree with that, bro. Sometimes you gotta get your leg cut.
It's a little bit on that second toe, and then that toe.
We out here in Missouri. Pandemic hit.
COVID hits, totally wipes out all of our business. Today we lost about $10,000. Country on lockdown pretty much. Everybody gotta stay at home. A lot of people out of work. A lot of people can't make no money. We remodeling this Dollar General store, and I found all of these girls' driver's license and social security cards. And I know one of the girls is missing.
Yeah, that'd do something different to me. The police pulled me over. Let me go. I got 5 acres. Like, how many niggas you gonna pull over today with 5 acres, sir?
Still treating you like that.
You a nigga.
That dude. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
They treat you like you're a hoodlum still.
Exactly.
With everything that's going on out here, we done had our fair shake with the racism and discrimination.
How is it living in a sundown town? Like, black people can't come out at night?
Think about the history in small towns like this.
Police are slick, and they know what they doing. And I hate to say this, but they threw him in a river alive.
Everybody should be at work, going on with their life, but instead we here demanding justice for my son.
So we really been coming from a good side with a really sad man. Got me stacking paper up all to the ceiling fan. Rolling in my big body bigger than John got it. Spent all my money on some goddamn property. Fuck about the ride the Uncle buying the Bugatti. Around the old school, standing still on the body. Yeah, and they done hoodie real, no carbon copy. 100 gram me, you can't stop he. Almighty gonna be coming up and you'll see. Next to become part of the FC. Yeah, never come back, they go turn the critical when they come to the music.
My people said it burned. Had to leave it wasn't worth it. Now we out here steady searching to go and make our life perfect. Had to go and lead the eggs to go and find a better way. Now we making money every day. So believe we won't lose, won't lose, won't lose. Believe we won't lose, won't lose, won't lose. Believe we won't. Had to go and lead the eggs to go and find a better way. Now we making money every day.
Day out, day out.
You already know, man, every day.
Find a way out, way out.
Find a way out, way out,
way out.
real. Ay, I be steady thugging all day out, day out. I be out here trying to find a way out, way out, way out, way out, way out, way out, way out. Ay, I be steady thugging all day out, day so far, we gon' make it, that's for certain. Keep on kicking these flows and shows till they close the curtains. And keep a cake for the day that we have to start murking. LA done hooded, don't wanna have to start hurting people's feelings, but I will spill it if they mouths twerking.